G'day cunts, Dean from Blog for the Blood God here, and as many of you will know, I am an absolutely massive advocate for team events and teams in Warhammer 40k. I recently did an episode on this podcast where I outlined why I believe that team events are the future of competitive Warhammer 40k, and I outlined all of the reasons that they absolutely shit on singles events, from everything from the way that the event is structured to the lists that are able to perform, the way it affects the meta and everything. I outlined it all in great detail. In today's episode, I want to outline the other side of that coin, and that is how you can use teamwork in Warhammer 40k to improve your singles experience. So by creating a team or a gaming club, what that can do, how you can structure it, and how that will help you develop as a player and become a better Warhammer 40k player overall. So without further ado, let's get into the episode.
Blog for the Blood God presents the BloodyOath podcast.
G'day cunts, Dean from Blog for the Blood God here, and I wanted to do a follow-up episode to one that I released recently on team events and discuss teams in 40k in a little bit more detail, because that episode, while it was pretty comprehensive and it covered a lot of things, I think there's a lot more to deep dive on just the value of team events and playing within a team in 40k in general. It's typically 40k is not really viewed as a team sport because most of your games are 1v1. However, I think there is a massive team component to this game that is available, not required, but it is available, and there's immense value to be gained by being part of a team. So I wanted to sort of just break down my thoughts on why I think team events and team 40k is absolutely amazing and is potentially the future of 40k. So first, just a real quick recap on the team events episode. So the episode, I think it was 2 or 3 episodes ago, I did a really detailed breakdown on why I think team events are absolutely premium and are potentially the future of 40k. So make sure you go back and check that one out if you missed it. But basically the idea is that there's a lot of things that you can do in team events that you simply can't do in singles. So for example, team events generally make a restriction where each player on your team can only use each faction once. So like you can't have 3 Dark Eldar players, right? And what this does, which is unique to team events, is it forces diversity in the meta. Whereas you could go to a tournament now and it'll be like every second player is either AdMech or Orc, you know? But at a teams event, it's not possible for that to be the case. And the bigger the teams, the more diversity you are forced to have within the meta. So I touched on a lot of things like that, and also things like how in the team process you do pairings where you essentially get to play a little bit of a mini game where you determine who versus who. And as a result, when you're designing lists, you can get away with designing a list that has a critical flaw, because then you can protect it from its bad matchups in that pairings process. So you can actually run a list like, let's say, a bunch of knights. You can run that knowing that if you go up against something with like OBSEC Horde, you're gonna lose because they're just gonna have more bodies than you can kill and they're just gonna hold all the objectives. You couldn't run that at a singles event because if you go up into that matchup, you just lose and it's game over, and there's nothing you can do about it. Whereas in a team event, you actually can run those more skewed lists because you can protect it from the bad matchups and try to get it into its good matchups, and as a result, it becomes a weapon, right? There's a billion other reasons why team events are absolutely fucking amazing, and I think they go a long way to fixing almost everything that's wrong with this game, from balance patch, like from imbalanced codexes to interpersonal conflicts and things like that. Like team events just solve so many fucking things that I really strongly campaign for them to be the main way in which we play 40k, and keep the singles games for like practice, or more casual stuff. But if you want to take the game seriously and you want to play an actual high-level, competitive, balanced, challenging style of play, team events are where it's at. Which is why the World Championships is a team event. Like, that's not a coincidence. So, but yeah, go check out my last episode on teams if you want to hear all of the other reasons why team events are just absolute premium events. But what I wanted to talk about in this episode is the team dynamics outside of the event, and the reason that being part of a team is such a powerful and amazing thing for everybody involved. So this includes being part of like a more traditional gaming club. You can sort of think of a gaming club as a team, and most people would be already in one. So imagine like most people, they sort of start out 40k when they're young with like their brother maybe, or a couple of mates from school, and then maybe over the years a few people fall out, but then you go to a tournament and you meet people and you've got a couple new mates, and then they fall in, and you've got sort of, most people will have an inner circle of a few people that they play with semi-regularly. It might be the regulars at your local hobby store, it might be, you know, family members or close friends. That could be viewed as a team. If you view that as a team instead of just viewing it as your mates, right? Just pivoting your perspective on it instantly makes it so much more valuable, because now you really care if those people succeed. You really care if those people get better. You know, you want to help them develop and play the game better, because they're no longer your opponents, they're your team. And then even if you go to a singles event, you'll go to that event hoping that all of your teammates perform really well. As opposed to being like, you know, in the past I've had situations where my main motivation was just scoring better than one of my mates. You know, like we were competing against each other across the event. So like if he crushed someone, I'd be like, fuck, he's now gonna have more points than me, he's gonna place higher. You know, he might come 5th and I might come 8th or something like that. And I'm like, no, I want to place higher than him on the I want to podium, and I want him to not podium, you know. But that mentality, the problem with that is it stifles collaboration. It meant that me and him weren't sharing lists before events, because I didn't want him to see what I was bringing, because I didn't want him to counter it, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, but that stifles that collaboration, and it makes us both worse. You know, and then as a result, we go to the event and we're not as good and not as prepared as we could otherwise have been. Whereas if we were considering each other teammates, and instead of going to the event trying to place higher than one another, if we were being teammates, we could have then helped each other refine our lists before the event. We could have played against each other a bunch of times and gone, okay, this relic doesn't work the way I was hoping it would work, I might swap it out for a different one, you know. Like you can fine tune it as a team, and then go to that event, even if it's a singles event, you can go to that event together as a team, and then get way better results. So that's one of the areas in which treating your gaming club as a team, like a sports team, is so much more powerful than just being a bunch of mates in a garage or whatever, you know. And there's a few ways that this can be achieved. I think having a team name is important, and sticking with it. Like often when we do like our little team events where it might be teams of 4, you know, you might have like, I've got a gaming club that's probably around, I don't know, 20 people, 20 people or 10 people who play regularly, and 20 people who play like sort of on and off. So when there's like a 4-man team event, we'll break up into little groups of 4. And when we do that, we all give ourselves some kind of name, right? And it's generally like a joke name or whatever. But if you instead create a team name for your 10 to 20 people and be like, we are team fucking whatever, then let's say you go with Team Kraken. We are Team Kraken. That's our name. You know, then when you go to that teams event, you go, you know, Team Kraken number 1, Team Kraken number 2, Team Kraken number 3. So you're all there representing Team Kraken, but just within smaller pods. And then that way you've got this one consistent thing in every team event that you go to, you're representing the Kraken, you know? And that way you've got that consistency, you've got some pride behind it, and you're all gonna work together, even across teams. You're gonna be like, well, us 4 are gonna help your 4, so that the 8 of us can go to the team event and do really well. There's also things like team shirts. I'm a huge advocate for team shirts. These days you can get a custom designed t-shirt for $20. Like, it's so cheap that when I see teams at an event without shirts, I immediately think, well, they're they're not taking this very seriously. You know, like, it doesn't take much effort to, you know, I mean, the hardest part, I guess, for most people is the designing of the team logo and stuff like that. But even then, there's so many online services that are free where you can go in and you just type logo designer and it's like, oh, cool, type in your team name, pick a font, and, you know, pick one of this billion, like, logo designs, and then that's your logo now. You know, it doesn't have to be anything too unique or fancy. But having, like, a team logo on your team shirt, your name on the back, you go to the event, you're representing the team, like, the things that does for your motivation and your morale is it can't be understated, because, and I've said this a billion times on this podcast before, but 40K is as much a psychological game as it is a strategic one. There's so much power in the way that you approach the game and your competitive mindset and your emotional, like, position when you start that game is almost as important as your list, you know? And I know tons of players that do really, really well no matter what list you put them on, and that's because they've figured out this trick, and that the trick is that it's about you, it's not about your list. And one of the best ways to improve you as a player is to get that motivation and that sort of energy behind you that's going to inspire you to just absolutely destroy people on the table. And one of the best ways to do that, I find, is to make yourself part of a team of people that you respect and people that you want to work with and collaborate with, and then you're sort of committed to delivering those results. An interesting way to look at it, or a metaphor that you could use, is dieting, right? If you go on a diet, but you don't tell anyone you're on a diet, and you don't really set yourself any goals, you're just like, I'm just going to go on a diet, right? I'm just going to stop eating. I'm just going to stop drinking energy drinks every day. I'm going to stop being a fat cunt. I'm going to stop drinking during the week. If you do that, but you don't tell anyone, you're like, this is just my little project I'm just going to work on. You're almost guaranteed to fail, right? But if you tell everyone, and you're like, this is what I want to do, and then you get a bunch of other people that are like, yeah, we'll go on a diet with you, you know, and we'll do the same thing. And then, like, it might be, you know, people you live with at home, it might be a partner, or it might be just, you know, friends online or whatever. If you tell people that you're in this together, you're now going to be held accountable, and you're going to stick to that diet because you don't want to let them down. You know, you don't want to disappoint them. Whereas if it's just on you, you're gonna talk yourself out of it. You know, you're gonna be like, you know what? I know I said I wasn't gonna drink during the week, but my boss was a fucking cunt nugget today, and I'm sick of his shit, and I just want to unwind, and I deserve this, and I work fucking hard, so fuck this diet. I'm gonna fucking have a beer, and all of a sudden you've done yourself in. But if you're part of a team of people that are on a diet, you're going to come home and you're going to be like, my boss was a fucking cunt. And maybe instead of having a drink, you'll call up a mate and you'll be like, hey man, fucking, I, you know, had a fucked day. I need to blow off some steam, you know, and you'll seek alternatives, or, you know, because you'll be more invested in achieving that goal. And that mentality, that metaphor applies directly to 40K. If you're part of a team, you're much more likely to push yourself to your limits, and that's how you grow as a player. Pushing yourself to your limits forces growth. If you just stay within your comfort zone, you won't grow. So when you go to if you go to a singles event and you're not part of a team, and you're playing a game and the person you're versing is being a dickhead, and it's a really tough matchup, and you know, you'll just be like, fuck this, I quit, I concede, or you'll just start fucking around, or you won't take it very seriously and you won't put in the effort, because you'll be like, it's not worth it, you know? Like, they might do something and you might be like, well, that's not how that works, but it's not worth arguing with this guy because he's clearly being a dickhead, and it's not worth the drama, and I just can't be fucked. So you just let people do things, you know? There's all kinds of excuses that you can concoct in your own head that will permit you to lose a game that you could otherwise win. Whereas when you're part of a team, you don't have those excuses anymore, because you'll be like, well, hang on, I know this game is difficult and I know my opponent's being a dick, but I don't want to bring back a loss for my team. I want to win so that I can contribute to my team and that my team can get the best results, you know? So you're much more likely to steel yourself and you know, put in that extra little bit of effort, or the little bit of, you know, mental effort to bring home those results. And that's something that you just simply wouldn't do if you were not part of a team. Same goes for war. Like, when people go to war, there's a reason that they have national anthems, and there's a reason that they all, you know, wear the same uniform. Like, you know, the Crusaders all wearing the same, you know, like whatever. They all have this sort of branding on them. They fly the same flag, you know. And the reason that they fly the flag is to remind them that it's not about you, it's about the team. And when you have that mentality, you can achieve amazing things. So that's like the morale side of things when it comes to motivation and inspiration. But then there's also a lot of practical applications for being in a team. So like I said at the start of this, how being on a team, it gives you the ability to collaborate with other players, and it gives you the ability to, you know, sort of work together and figure shit out. That's can't be understated. So like, if you go, okay, well, normally these three cunts are top tier players in my area, or, you know, at least they're my peers. You know, you might not all be top tier players. You might be mid tier. You might even be bottom tier players that just, you know, just can't seem to get out of the bottom, you know, 20%. But either way, these are people that you're likely to have to verse at tournaments, right? So you might not want them to know what you're bringing. You might not want them to figure out the tricks in your list, you know, like you might have this really cool trick that you can do that you've just figured out, and you don't want them to know. You want to reveal it at the event, you know. That's one thing that a lot of people do, is they'll work on secret tech in their list, like a secret combo of relics and warlord traits, or it might be a stratagem that if you combine that stratagem with this, you can do whatever. And you might reveal your list. You might play some practice games with your list against these people, but you won't reveal that little secret piece of tech. And you'll save that so that when you do verse them at the tournament, they've played against your list a bunch of times, and therefore they think they know how to beat it. But in reality, you've got this secret trick that you're going to pull, and they're going to be completely like bamboozled by it. Like, you know, that's something that a lot of people do. But the problem is in doing that, you don't actually practice the trick, and you don't actually refine it. So as a result, you don't get proficient with it, and you might not be able to utilize it very well on the day. So whereas if you were treating that person like a teammate, instead of a punching bag, you know, they're a teammate, you can then go, okay, well, I want to do this trick against you so that we can work on it together. And not only are you getting better now because you've shown your trick and you've mastered it now, you know, you've developed it and you've mastered it, and you now know how to wield it, but you've also insulated them against somebody else pulling that trick on them, because now they understand what that trick is and they understand how to work around it. And sure, if you get paired into that person, you now can't use that trick against them, or, you know, it's more difficult for you to use that trick because they're aware of it. But that's okay, because they're your teammate, you know. But now you're running around the rest of the event using that trick really efficiently against other people, and that person's running around the event knowing that if somebody tries to pull that trick on them, they're prepared for it. You know, like a good example is like when Grey Knights had the, I'm not sure if they still have it or not, but they had a stratagem that allowed them to deep strike within 3 inches of you instead of 9. You know, so that's a nifty little trick. And if your opponent doesn't know that you have that, they're going to measure out their little 9-inch bubbles, and they're going to insulate their backfield, and they're going to be like, yep, cool, I've screened you out, you can't drop here. And then you can just go, boom, I'm going to drop in anyway within 3 inches of you, and then shoot you with my, you know, purgators or whatever. And it's like, that trick, if it catches people off guard, it can be an absolute game-winning strategy. But so you might be a Grey Knights player, and you might be playing against your regular teammates, and you might be like, I'm not going to show them this one in case I have to verse them at a tournament in a game that actually matters, as opposed to like these little practice games. And in your head, you'll be looking for those opportunities to do that trick, and you'll be like, oh, if I wanted to, I could totally drop in there and kill that character that he thinks he's protected, but he hasn't, and then that pulls him apart, and then blah, blah, blah. And you're like, yep, sick, this trick is amazing. I can't wait to reveal it at, XYZ tournament that's coming up, right? You might be thinking, yeah, that's awesome. But what you don't realize is that because you didn't practice it, you completely underestimated the fact that he has Auspex scan. So then when you verse him in a tournament, you drop down and you're like, haha, gotcha. And then he's like, Auspex scan, haha, gotcha back. And now that Purgator squad that you dropped in just gets fucking obliterated by something. And you're like, oh my God, my trick didn't work. And if I had thought that he had Auspex scan, I could have actually dropped over there where that unit has, trash guns or whatever, and done something completely different. And it's like, well, you've just fucking done yourself in by not treating that person as a teammate. It's sort of like a punching bag is a good way to look at it. Like, you don't want to treat the people in your team as a punching bag. You want to treat them as a sparring partner, where, they get to throw some punches, you get to throw some punches, you learn how to take a punch, you learn how to throw a punch. You learn how to dodge it, you learn how to, roll with it. If you treat the people in your team as they are teammates, it's so much better for your development as a player than if you treat everybody like a punching bag that's just there for you to work out on, Like I can't overstate it. It's so important, it's so powerful. Not to mention there's things like, obviously the ITC do like team rankings and things like that. So that's another way in which you can get this intense sense of motivation, because you might go to a tournament where you're the only one from your team at the event. So it's like, well, where's the motivation there? There's no one around, we're not here to try and get a big score together. We're not, but if you're the only one there, well, you're the only person at that event that's able to generate points for your team. So now it's like almost like a last man standing. It's all on your shoulders, and you've got to get in there and get it fucking done. And if you go in there with that mentality, you're absolutely going to perform way better, because you're not going to accept any losses and you're not going to take any shit, because it's up to you to win this. It's up to you to get those points, because you want your team to win best team for the season, and you can't do that if you don't put in the work. So I really wanted to emphasize that, because the podcast that I did on the teams was really focusing around the events themselves and the advantages on a sort of a practical level for why team events are so amazing and so much fun. And I highly recommend you go check out that episode. It was I covered a lot of stuff. There's so many reasons why the team events are premium as fuck. Yeah, what I didn't cover in as much detail as I have now is just the actual team dynamics and the team mechanic that can be achieved in regular singles 40k. So yeah, with that being said, I'm gonna leave it there. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I would love to hear your comments below. Let me know what you think of being in a team. Let me know if you're in a team, and let me know, your sort of thoughts on the way that the team dynamics work. Have you found them to be useful? Have you found them to be hurtful? Just let me know. We'll get a conversation happening in the comments. I love reading what you guys have to say. And as always, thanks for tuning in. Make sure you head over to my Patreon if you would like to support this channel. I also have a web store with neoprene objective markers if you want to show your support in a way that gets you something in return. And make sure you like and share this. Maybe if you're considering building a team of your own and there's a few people that you would like to get involved in your team, maybe send them this and say, look, mate, I'm thinking of, I watched this podcast and it gave me this really good idea for starting a team. Give it a look, Whatever. Either way, I love you guys, and I'll chat to you next time. Thanks for tuning in. Bye. Alrighty, cunts, thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe and all of that good shit. Make sure to follow, make sure to share this, and please, comment below, because I love hearing what you guys have to say, particularly on topics like this around teamwork and around tournaments, because that's one of my main favorite things in Warhammer 40k. So getting a conversation going in the comments below is fucking premium. That being said, if you like premium shit, make sure you check out my neoprene objective markers available on my web store. There'll be links in the description for all that shit. Support me on Patreon if you enjoy my content, because that allows me to purchase things like better cameras, better microphones, better equipment, more models that I can test different things at tournaments and give you guys results. All of that good shit, I'm able to provide more content for you with the support you guys give me on Patreon. There'll be links to all this shit in the comments below. So yeah, thanks for tuning in. I'll talk to you guys soon. Do your objective markers ever get lost behind terrain or other models and become difficult to see? Do they ever get bumped and accidentally moved during a game? And do they ever spark arguments about distances? Well, not anymore. Introducing the blog for the Blood God, not even remotely patented neoprene objective markers. Made from the same material as astronaut suits, or maybe military equipment, or probably neither of those things, this 2mm thick neoprene synthetic rubber is tear resistant, water resistant, and is designed to last. But that's not all. The blog for the Blood God, not even remotely patented neoprene objective markers come in a variety of different designs and styles to suit any faction represented in the Warhammer 40,000 universe. These objective markers are a perfect gift for yourself or a friend, and are a perfect way to flex and show your opponent that not only are you a smarter, cooler, and better 40k player than them, but you also have more disposable income than they do. For the low price of $25, you'll get not one, not two, but 6 neoprene objective markers, perfectly designed for 9th edition Warhammer 40k. But wait, there's more. For a limited time only, people who sign up on Patreon to support Blog for the Blood God as a Skull Champion tier $5 per month member will gain access to a custom design service where I will design a unique logo to support their gaming club, like the one I did to the left here for the Potato Farmers local gaming club here in Melbourne. Follow the links in the description of this video to pick up your set today.